I discuss, parallel realities, a multiversal reality sort of existence. I'd love to get your explanation in using the Merkaba and your tools that you teach in exploring other versions of the self.
Okay, so I started having these experiences where I was encountering the kind of coincidence that was bigger and more like spiritual than even a normal coincidence might be. And so I started asking my guides what was going on. And they told me and showed me that these were other versions of me or other versions of people I knew. And so I began to track all this, and it was an amazing discovery. So, for example, I had two men who were both born in a major city in Japan and had emigrated to the US. One man lived in Seattle, the other man lived in New York. One man was the tall Japanese type, and the other one was the petite Japanese type. And they both had taken the Merkaba course with me, and they both decided to go to Egypt with me on that particular trip. And I was going regularly once a year, so they could have picked any year, but they both picked the same year. So I decided to put Yoshi with the other man together as roommates. And I was told by my guides that these two men were the same soul, but two different versions of themselves. So as a spiritual teacher, I don't tell people stuff. I let them discover it, and then I get to confirm it for them. It's much more powerful if you have an experience and I say, oh yes, everybody gets this, purple blue light when they see their higher self, or a lot of people get that. That's more validating than if I tell you ahead of time and you're looking for the purple blue light and you don't see it. So these two men on the trip come to me and say, that teaching about other versions of yourself, we discovered we are other versions of each other. And then there was a story of two Marys. One was in New York, one was in Miami, and they were both Hispanic. They were so similar that the staff got them mixed up, and they thought it was one person making two appointments. We finally got that sorted out, and the first Mary her husband had just taken a job in Miami, and she was terrified to move because all her family was in New York. And so I asked my guides, am I to introduce them? And my higher self said, yes. Now, one of the things that I have found with other versions of you is that they show up to give you a nudge or a leg up or to help you in some way in an area that you are very interested in, to, give you that extra push that you need to get a book written or to get an idea across or to get an invention handled. And one day, one of my students approached a well-known author, the man who wrote the book, Return of the Revolutionaries. And he's a medical doctor, and she had heard him lecture in Seattle. And so she approached him after the lecture and said, one of the people that I study with has said that there could be multiple versions of the same person, and I'd like your take on it. And of course, this man has written books on people like Martha Washington, George Washington, all the revolutionaries who come back into life today and are here to help the mastermind, the next generation of mastery that we're moving into. And he said, oh yeah, I totally get that. And let me tell you my story. And he proceeds to tell a story of how he was giving a lecture in Hong Kong, and a man from India approached him. This man was also a medical doctor, and they had an instant liking for each other. They felt like they knew each other. They went to dinner and they started discussing their careers. And sure enough, one area that the first doctor had kind of set aside to pursue this very specialized interest in, the return of the revolutionaries, the other doctor from India had taken it up. And so my irreverent story about this is that you meet for coffee in the sky once a month. You want to take the Hawaii gig. You want to take the Hong Kong job. Do you want to write about this subject? I'll cover the other thing. Isn't that fun?